If you see me walking down the street, you don't know I have epilepsy. You don't. So it's invisible. And I happen to be wearing my orange shirt today because it is for Diversity and Inclusion Board where I work. And as I've explained it to people who have epilepsy, a lot of time they don't get included because I'm afraid to have to ask for a ride everywhere. So you kind of step back, and because you step back, you miss being social, very social. So that makes you kind of cornered to where the only people that you're actually with a lot is just your family. But people like to be social because they like to see how everyone else, just in general, is living. Like you talk about your kids. I can't believe she did this today. you know, um, but when you can chit chat with other people just about life, it makes a difference. But when you can't, because you're literally secluded at home, it makes you feel very lonely. And I know that epilepsy can lead people into depression. Hello, my name is Terri Pajaris, and I consider myself at this point in time in my life an epilepsy survivor. When I was growing up, I was fine until I turned 20 and had a seizure in a college classroom where I slid out of a chair. Found myself in the ambulance, had no idea why I was there, and I had a second one in the same class. So at least I told people maybe I really didn't like the class. I still wanted to be able to live, in some aspects, a normal life. I don't think people realize that if they can't drive, they miss out on a lot. You don't want to ask other people for rides. I bring up little points here and there that I think people are like, whoa, that's a point. I can't believe it. When you're always getting picked up, you're happy that someone's there to pick you up so that you don't have to take like a cab or any other type of service, that it's someone who is willing to pick you up. But they have their radio station on, and it's not like you can't jump in their car and say, well, wait, can we switch it to this radio station? So to give one aspect, I missed about 10 to 15 years in music. And what I mean by that, I like country music, but you know how you jump in your car in the morning and you're listening to the radio and a new song comes out and you're like, whoa, I like this. And so you start getting exposed to stuff like that. Well, when you're not the driver of the vehicle, that stops. And that almost literally stopped for a lot of things. I am just learning now literally how to use my cell phone as a computer. It's kind of amazing. I was healthy. I played sports and everything in school. And then all of a sudden, your life just does like a 180. I met a lady the other day, and her son just started having seizures, and he was 15. And I just closed my eyes, and I was like, oh, he was just getting the idea of being able to drive a vehicle. And now that's just been cut completely. When your kids are growing up, you're happy that they're able to have a good life, but you can't tote them anywhere. You always have to rely on someone else to be able to take them to their baseball games, football games. And then with the medicine in you, there are times that I just felt so tired, I didn't want to go to a baseball game or a basketball game. So I also missed out on those kind of aspects too with my kids. And so that's why I took the next steps. I was willing to get all the testing, and I was like, I want to have the surgery. And I had left temporal surgery, which your memory comes out. But every time I had a seizure, your brain is actually, in some essence, getting the shock. And so there's so much about my kids growing up I don't remember. And that sometimes upsets me because my husband will say something like, well, do you remember this? And I'll be like, no. Well, wait, do you remember that? And sometimes I'm like, I wish he would not even ask that question. So epilepsy does a lot. Besides physical, it's also mental. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, how much it can cause a lot of problems. But it's not just the person with epilepsy. It's the whole family around it. You know, if I need a ride, well, who's picking mom up tonight? Well, I can't. I got to do this. Okay, well, who can do this? You know, and so the kids are trying to figure out who's the one that can pick mom up at work. And so that's taken away from their life. I don't think people see it that way, but it does, because they always have to know that they have to do something. I know insurance plans, as long as you hit the deductible, you get the surgery. Well, I'm lucky because of where I work, my deductible wasn't that high. It was $3,000 for each individual on the policy, but I usually hit my $3,000. So I'm like, my surgeries to me were absolutely free because I scheduled them for the end of the year. And by paying all for your medicines and your regular doctor's appointments and stuff like that, it's pretty easy for someone with epilepsy to hit that 3,000. But I had the pet mall seizures, and then they started happening more often. And I was at work and I might have 3 or 4 a day. But the other part of my brain is working so I can walk, you know, from like the copy machine to my office. And so a lot of people wouldn't even know I was having a seizure. And there was a girl in my office, her name is Glenda, that if I really felt I was having a bad one, I would call her name out. And then she would walk with me down to my office, and she would sit in the other chair in my office, and I'd be at my desk. And, you know, after about 30 seconds to a minute, I'd come out of it and I'd be like, why are you sitting here? And that's when she'd tell me that I had a seizure. Me, I could be walking, you know, I could be walking to the restroom, go to the restroom, come back to my desk, and then go, wait, what did I do for the last, you know, minute or couple minutes of time? It affects you in the idea that you have no idea what you did for those 2 minutes. You don't know if you were laughing. You don't know if you were, you know, screaming. You just don't know. Now, I know through my history, I don't do any of that, but it's the depression that sits in after you get back, and you get back into, whoa, and you're sitting there going, I just have no idea. So I could have said something wrong, you know, not meaning. And believe it or not, the girl I met yesterday, because she was willing to come up and say something to me, because my daughter pointed her out, she says she always asks for water after she has a seizure. And she go, and people were bringing her water, and she was like, why are you bringing me water? And they said, you always ask for water. So it's strange, like I said, how everybody's brain works. Mine, it's just I lose that minute of time on the pet mall seizures. And those were on the left side. The ones that were longer and stronger is where I get weak. And I have to take a nap for a couple hours. I just lost my first son. And that's because some of the medicines that were used for the seizure control, and I was on three or four, can make your embryo sac thinner. And so I got a tear in my sac. So I was bedridden for about 26 weeks. And then what happened was that apparently I got an infection. And so I had to rush into the hospital, and I had a C-section. And my husband didn't tell me this because I was sick too, because I'd gotten the infection. We almost lost him. He was in NICU for about a week, and I had been taking steroids to get his weight up, sense of what, you know, happened to me. And so he was born at 5 pounds and 5 ounces. He came home at 2 pounds. but he was blue in the face. But like I said, my husband didn't tell me why this was going on, and they didn't think he was going to survive through the night, but he did. And so I think I was on Topamax then. I think I was on Lamictal. But I know I was on like 3 or 4 medicines with each pregnancy. But in some aspects, like I said, we sat with the doctors and I was like, well, I'm not taking those. None of those. I don't want the idea of a child with cleft palate. You know, you get a point where you want to change your life if you know your life isn't really going in the right direction. I mean, to be a mom, but you can't even run to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread because you can't drive. And the pressure it puts on the other people. So, you know, in some aspects, it's amazing. I'm surprised my husband didn't leave me. You know, I mean, just to have that much pressure. And, I mean, I was lucky. We had 4 kids, and one of them was an oops, but because of Katrina, she was born up in Omaha, Nebraska. So, and then after that happened, we had to live in a FEMA trailer for 2 years where our house was being rebuilt. And that was because a tree fell on our house. And what I've been reading about people who had epilepsy, like Theodore Roosevelt, and he was a president of the United States. You know, some major athletes, actors and actresses, but you never hear about them talking about it. Yeah, I mean, they showed up somewhere and talked about it one time, but it's just, I can't believe how many people have epilepsy and the knowledge just isn't out there. I don't understand it. But it's got to be the stigma associated because it's your electrical system, but it's in the brain is the way they look at it. So something's wrong with you. And I know that just early on, people just they didn't understand it. And that's what it is. When people do not understand something, they look at it negatively. I mean, Socrates had epilepsy. And how long ago was that?